Hello everybody, in this video we're going to make a program that shows why dictionaries are great, the vote counter. Alright, let's get going. So it doesn't matter if you're voting for Pedro or if you're voting for Bugs Bunny, counting up votes is a classic problem that needs to be solved in the real world. So if I made this program with lists, I might have a list of votes like this. I would need to make two lists, one of the candidates and one of their votes, the vote counter. I would loop over the votes, and if the vote went to Pedro, I would increase the scores, the first item in the scores list, by 1. And if the vote went to Summer, I would increase the second item in the scores list by 1. So it would look something like this. At the end, I'll have a scores list with values 3 and 2, and I'll have the candidates list, which labels that data for me. So what if I told you there was a better way? Well, there is, and that's the whole point of this lab. And what that way does is take me from two lists, which aren't really labeled that well, to one dictionary where my data is labeled well. So I'm going to get my instructions and starter code. I'll double click the name of the file. The link here is in the description below. Control C to copy it. Then I'll go into my PyCharm, right click, new Python file. Right click, new Python file. I'll paste it in, put my name at the end, and there's my new file. I'll go back to Replit. I'll select the whole thing. Control C for copy, Control V for paste, and now I'm ready to go. Remember, the general strategy is to look at the instructions, then look at the program run, and try to write your code. And watch the video only if you get stuck. Your goal here is to build your long-term programming skills, and this is the best way. So let's get started on the lab. Step 1 says I need to make a function vote counter. So the way that I do that is def function name, parentheses, colon, so def vote counter, parentheses, colon, and now I'm done with this part. Next, still on step 1, I need the parameters. Remember, parameters do two things. They get information from the outside world, and then after that, they're just variables. So I want to name it with a good variable name that describes exactly what it is. My parameter is a list of votes, so I'll name my parameter p_votes. P stands for parameter, and votes with the S shows that it's plural, and therefore is a list. Last part of step 1 says I need to have a return. So I'll put a return in the code just to remind me I need to have a return. It's not enough to print out the final dictionary. I need to return it. Before I go on, I want to show how this program works. We start off with a list of votes. Remember, this is the parameter of the function. I'll also have a dictionary which keeps track of the votes, and this is what I return at the end. It's going to start off empty. Remember this for later. I'll go over every vote, and when you hear the word every, that means you'll have a loop. Remember that for later. I need a loop, which I can implement with a for. A for. Now I need to check. Scenario 1 is that this vote isn't in the dictionary as a key. And if that's the case, I'll need to add it into the dictionary, this vote into the dictionary, as a key, where the key is who I'm voting for, and the value is 1, because it's the first vote for that person. Then my loop continues, and I go on to the next vote. Scenario 2 is when the person who gets the vote is already in the dictionary as a key. In that case, I need to increase the vote count, which is the value, by 1. Now, when you hear the word scenario, multiple scenarios, in your mind, you should be thinking about ifs, elifs, and maybe an else. Remember that for later too. So as I loop through the votes list, I'll end up eventually with a dictionary that looks like this. And in this particular case, the key Pedro will have a value of 3 for 3 votes, and the key Summer will have a value of 2 for 2 votes. Now, back to the code. The hints say to make an empty dictionary. This is going to be the dictionary that stores our votes, and then we need to count the votes, so we'll loop over the votes one by one. We'll loop over them with a for. Remember, the votes are stored in the p_votes parameter. And now we have two scenarios, and when we have scenarios, we'll use an if and an else. First scenario is where the vote is already in the dictionary, and the second scenario is where the vote is not in the dictionary. So I will code the skeleton for that now. Between the two, the else is a little bit easier to code. This is the first vote that the person gets. So the way we add values into the dictionary with keys is dictionary bracket key is equal to the value. The key is the variable vote, and the value is 1 since it's the first vote that person gets. And now let's test this out. If you remember, this function is supposed to return this vote dictionary. And if we call this function with an argument of a list with 1 vote in it, a vote for Pedro, it should return me a dictionary with Pedro as a key and the value of 1. So let's see if this is so. This test looks like it works. It gives me a dictionary with key of Pedro and a value of 1. Now let's see what happens if I add another vote for summer. And as I expect, it gives me a dictionary with key of Pedro value of 1 and a key of summer with a value of 1. So everything there is good. So I'm just going to clean up these debugging printing messages real quick. And now we'll move on to if. This is the scenario where the key is in the dictionary. Somebody already voted for the person. So your first thought might be just to set the vote equals to 2. And if I run it, it looks like it might work. But if I change the votes to 3, though, the dictionary's value is stuck on 2. So this is not the solution. So what is it then? Well, when we change the value of a dictionary, we do dictionary bracket key is equal to the new value. What's the new value? The new value is the old value plus 1. I'm adding 1 to the old value. So now let's program that in for the if, where the key is already in the dictionary. The value is equal to the old value plus 1. And when I run this, I get what I expect, which is Pedro having 3 votes. So finally, I'm going to run a few other tests. The first test is with no votes, and I should get a dictionary with nothing in it. And the second test is with Pedro having 5 votes, and I should have a dictionary with Pedro with 5 votes. Finally, I want to mention some common mistakes that people make. The first and most common mistake that people make is how they test the program. The way they test the program is they overwrite the parameter with a whole bunch of votes in the function. So something like this, where I take the value of the parameter p votes and I set it, I hard-code it to just these votes. If you do this, your function will only work for these exact votes, and that's not what you want. You want this function to work for any vote. So something like this is wrong. The way you test your function is to call your function. Again, the way you test your function is to call your function. You call the function with the arguments that you want to test it with. That's how you test a function. And the other major mistake that people make is that the function wants you to have a return. Having a print is not the same thing as having a return. When you have a return, you end up calling the function a little bit differently because you have to use it right away, either by saving it to a value or printing it directly. But the other thing, and it's a little bit harder to see in this slab, is that you're not going to be able to save whatever you returned to use for later. And again, it doesn't matter as much here, but it's going to matter in other scenarios. And with that, the lab is done. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Hope that was useful to you. And if it was, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.